Yeah. Okay. All right. Uh, can I get a can I get let's say um what emojis are even there? Can I get a crying emoji if you don't like the subject? It's okay, no judgment from us. It's okay. Jennifer does not like you, Mr. Okay. A few people don't like it. All right. Awesome. Would you like to share why you don't like it? If you're fine with it. If you're okay with sharing. I know it seems like we're cornering you. We are really not. I'm curious. You know what I like bully you. How dare you not like novel, my god, no, nothing like that. Don't worry. Ah, yes. It feels like there is a lot of symptoms. Yes, mugging up symptoms. Don't worry. We're not going to do any of that. We're not going to be mugging up symptoms. Because mugging up symptoms does not make sense. So we won't do that. Okay. We'll focus more on what characterizes a disorder. Okay. Awesome. So what do you think of when you think of psychopathology? What's the very first word that comes to you? Start to like it more after my internship. That's good. Just one word that comes to your head when you think of the word psychopathology. Empathy. Shambhavi, you would make a great addition to a field called as descriptive psychopathology. Do look into that. DSM, diagnosis, disorders, psychopathology. Okay. Hmm. Has anyone heard of this book called Fish? Fish is this book of clinical psychopathology. Yeah, R.D. Laing's Divide Itself. You've read R.D. Laing's Divide Itself? That's so awesome. Divide Itself is one of my favorite works in existential phenomenology. It's a beautiful book. Okay. The rest of you, have you heard of Fish's textbook of clinical psychopathology? Okay. A few people have. It's a very interesting book. It's a very cool book. It's a very small book also. Right? There's two very famous books in this area. There's Fish, right? And there's also Sims. I'll come to Sims a little later. Sims, Symptoms in the Mind. I'll come to that a little later when I'm talking about the approaches. Okay. Very, very helpful book. One of my favorite uh, reads in this area. Okay. Fish's book, right? He starts with this one very interesting line that has always stuck with me, right? He writes, okay, that wait, I'm not sure if it's a he. Okay, they. Okay, for now. Okay, I'm sorry, I did not want to assume, but I thought it was a dude, but okay, fine. They write that any discussion, right? Any discussion on the classification of diseases or disorders, whatever it is, must begin with a very frank, a very honest admission, right? A confession in a way about etiology. This is the very first line of the book. Any discussion on the classification of diseases must begin with the frank admission about etiology, the very first line of the book. And this sounds a little, defensive, very attack kind of a thing. That why you're attacking the field? Because he is saying that any discussion about classifying disorders, right? What that is what we're doing, right? We're taking disorders and we're putting them into these classifications. Someone also mentioned the DSM, but we don't know anything about their causes. Not as there's like the way with cold, etc. Right? Does anyone know what causes cold? Which disease causes cold? I'll be fresh if you know. Cold, the common cold. It's caused by which virus? Anyone knows? Yes, very nice. It's caused by the rhinovirus. Right? So we know the cause. I know that's a weird name. We'll move past that. But we know the cause that is caused by this. Right? We know the cause. Similarly, let's say with what else? What else? With jaundice as well, right? With jaundice, dengue, whatever it is, we know the cause over there, but we don't know the cause like this in this manner. That because of this, the disorder exists, so the disease exists in psychopathology. So we know that psychopathology or psychiatry or abnormal psych, whatever you want to call it, is a little different from medicine, with the medical field, right? Because they have a better idea about this. So, what are uh, professionals in the field, right? There are very important figures, right? One of the most important figures is Jaspers. Anyone knows who Carl Jaspers is? You won't find this in an introductory textbook to abnormal psych, which is just weird to me. Like, how are you writing a book on abnormal psychology and writing about Plato and Hippocrates, the four fluids, the whole humors and all, and not mentioning Carl Jaspers? It's just how are you doing that? It's like you're writing a book on psychoanalysis but not mentioning Freud. Carl Jaspers is one of the most important figures in classification. And surprise, surprise, he is also one of the founding fathers of existential therapy. Yes, yes, I know. Yeah, I got a little excited about that. Jaspers. Jaspers was actually best friends with Heidegger. This is okay, little drama, little gossip on the side. Okay, not relevant, but they were best friends till Heidegger joined the Nazi party. So uh, Jaspers and Heidegger were not friends anymore. Why? Because Jasper's wife was Jewish. So that's a little gossip on the side, but not relevant. But coming back, Jaspers, yeah, a lot of drama, dude, a lot of drama. But towards the end of the life, they kind of reconciled when Heidegger moved away from it. Heidegger is one of the most important figures in existential philosophy. So Jaspers, the way someone had mentioned this, right? Jaspers brought in phenomenology into psychopathology. Phenomenology is about subjective experience. And again, we'll come to this again when I'm talking about descriptive, right? About uh, the Sims textbook. So, Jaspers, very important name. How many Carls are there? Carl Jung's grandfather's name was also Carl Jung. So, he was technically Carl Jung Jr. But yeah, the more you know, I guess. So, this is psychopathology. And what Jaspers and even this guy, right? Kraepelin, for example. Jaspers, Kraepelin, what did they focus on? That okay, so right now till we don't know this, right, what do you call it, the cause, we'll focus on the symptoms, and with that we get syndromes, right? Syndromes are collections or clusters of symptoms that co-occur, right? For example, if you're seeing inattention in a child, you are more likely to see hyperactivity, impulsivity as well with them, and so that syndrome becomes what? Come on, easy answer. Which disorder? ADHD. Yes, comes ADHD, right? So those symptoms don't tell you exactly what the cause is, but based on that, we're able to help people. Based on that, we're able to help people about different things. So even though we don't know what causes ADHD, we're still able to detect that, okay, based on these symptoms and stuff, we're able to pick out, okay, this is likely ADHD. So that is the fascinating field of psychopathology, right? And all of these things, right? All of these things of what makes a disorder, right? The based on the study of classifying diseases or disorders. Does anyone know what it's called? Oops, I wrote the wrong one. Anyone knows what it's called? The study of classifying diseases or disorders. It has a very specific term. I'll be damn impressed if you know this. Don't Google it now. It's called nosology. Nosology is the study of classifying diseases and disorders. We say, right, this is a real disorder, this is not a real disorder. These are like, you'll see that some disorders were a part of a particular DSM edition, but now it's not. So who's deciding that on what basis? How do you know that, okay, until like 2013, one thing was a disorder, but once DSM-5 came out in 2013, these things were not disorders, and something else is a new disorder now. So that classification of diseases, classifying of disease and disorders is nosology. And what we are concerned with is psychopathology, which helps identify and treat. We are not sitting here to classify. That's not our job. If you are a part of the DSM task force, maybe, yes. It's raining very heavily outside, which is a very nice mood for drinking tea and talking about psychopathology, right? Okay. So there's some terms that we should know. You might have come across them. Nomothetic and idiographic. What is nomothetic? You might have learned these. If not, it's okay. We'll go over it. But nomothetic is generalizing to a large group of people related to a norm. Now, the term nomothetic only means like law, like coming from a law. So you're what you're talking about, right? You're generalizing it. So it's about a larger population or a larger crowd, right? A larger population. So that kind of a study is nomothetic. So you'll have like your clinical trials, right? Your clinical trials. They are more nomothetic. Idiographic, on the other hand, is about, yeah, the specific individual. Yes, you're right. One thing that I know I am tired and annoyed of is listening about Phineas Gage. Right? Every time you hear about this guy, every textbook, every introductory textbook, every biotech textbook brings them up some way or another. But that's an idiographic approach because you've taken this one person and you're studying what happened to them. Another person is HM. What happened to HM? Yeah, you can think of it like a case study. What happened to HM? Henry Moles. That's his name. No, no one knows what happened to HM. Memory wala, yes. His hippocampus was removed, nearly destroyed. Right? Now, this kind of a thing you can study with a person, but you can't do this nomothetic. You can't do this nomothetic. You can't go around destroying people's hippocampus. God, I hope not. I hope you don't do that. You can't do that nomothetic. So you have to take people who have gone through that in a way in order to study that. If you're looking for books to read on idiographic approaches, you can read Oliver Sacks' works. Right? His books take a more this what do you call it idiographic approach. If you don't even want to read it, you can watch the movie on Netflix today. I'm not sure if it's still there on Netflix, but it's called Awakenings is a movie in which it's portraying Oliver Sacks. Yes, the book is also very good. It's also based on the book. Yes, it's where Oliver Sacks uses L-dopa on clients with encephalitis, a very specific kind of encephalitis, which helps them to recover, which helps them to move, which helps them to begin initiating action. L-dopa is a precursor or a smaller form of dopamine. which can pass the blood-brain barrier. So if you want, you can watch that movie today. It's a very fun, very interesting, very cool, very well-made movie. The leading actor is this guy. I can't remember his name. The really cool guy. No, Little Dopamine is not the actual thing. It's I can't. The dude from Dead Poet Society. Dead Poet Society. The genie. I can't believe him. Robin Williams. Yes. No, no, not Robert De Niro is also there. Robin Williams. Yes. De Niro is also there. Yeah. Okay. Now, classification. Which classifications do you know about? Tell me. Okay. DSM, ICD. What else? What are this you know about? What are the classification do you know about? But which one? RDoc. Very nice. What else? बस हम लोग we'll study DSM ICD done over. Oh, Nancy McWilliams psychoanalytic formulation. Oh, ho, ho. Very nice. But you not, I'm not going to put it down because you've not given me the right name for it. You're very close, Shambhavi. I'm very impressed that you know that. But give me the proper name for it. The Nancy McWilliams formulation with someone else that they've written. Nope. That's the book, right? Psychoanalytic case formulation. That's the book that Nancy McWilliams has written. But their diagnostic classification is different. Give me the name. But I'm impressed. I'll know this. Very good. I'm just impressed seeing Nancy McWilliams' name. Yes, yes. It's called the PDM2, Psychoanalytic Diagnostic Manual. Right? Diagnostic Manual. Okay. The DSM is by who? We'll go over each of these. APA, what is the full form of APA? Which APA is given this? American American Psychiatric Association, not psychological. They can try to trip you up with that. Please do not abbreviate association. Yes, okay. Okay, ICD is given by? Yeah, tell me who gave it. Yes, who gave it? Yes. WHO, right? World Health Organization. Okay, I won't go too depth in this. We'll talk about this in a bit. RDoc, right? What is the full form of RDoc? Anyone knows? We will come to DSM and ICD in a second. I want to talk something very specific about its classification style. Yes, RDoc stands for Research Domain. What does RDoc believe? Research Domain Criteria. What does RDoc believe in? Why is RDoc a classification? What are they trying to do? Yes, right. It's not only focusing on the symptoms. That is what we were talking about before, right? Focusing on the symptoms, but it's also trying to focus on the biological markers, right? The underlying pathophysiology and a few other things you can find it across. So that is what RDoc is doing. Some MPhil exams ask about RDoc sometimes. Okay. Last is PDM. PDM, they don't really ask that often, but just something that you can know. PDM focuses more on lived experience, and it has one of the best organization systems according to me. Okay, this is my personal opinion. I am really impressed with the way they have organized things, mainly because of the people who have worked on it, right? Like Nancy McWilliams has worked on it, right? Wait, let me just write lived experience. Am I writing? Nancy has worked on it. Nancy McWilliams has worked on it. Shedler has worked on it, right? Shedler, Jonathan Shedler, very big name. So its organization is just peak because it's focusing on personality, lived experiences, and other things. I can't remember right now. It's been a while since I've seen it, but such peak this it has organization. So these are the major. There are more. There's the Chinese classification, etc. Now let me come back to DSM and ICD beyond what you have learned. Okay, how is the DSM organized? Is it alphabetical? How have they organized the disorders? Spectrum wise. Okay. Axes. You sure? DSM-5 onwards, you don't have axes. Axis system died. We'll come to the axis also, but axis is not there anymore. So how is spectrum is for each disorder, right? Because they're existing on a spectrum. We'll come to that also. Ah, very nice. Developmentally, right? If you look at the DSM, right? It is organized using the lifespan approach. Because it goes from disorders you can have in your childhood, right? Or that arise in childhood, that you might be born with, till disorders that develop across the lifespan. So it will start with neurodevelopmental, it will go to schizophrenia, it will go to your neurosis and anxiety, it will go to substance abuse, etc., etc. So it's taking a lifespan approach. So things you could be born with, things you could be or maybe since you were a child, like autism, ADHD, etc., and it keeps moving across the lifespan till old age. So it's a developmental organization. And within that, you'll have your spectrum, right? Your severity within each: mild, moderate, profound, severe, etc., etc. So the DSM has a lifespan approach or a developmental approach. So if you're ever looking at the classification, go over it. Have a look at it once. And you might be wondering that what about something like childhood disorders like, encopresis, enuresis, etc. They come much later, right? Schizophrenia comes much before it. Why? If it's based on developmental, why does enuresis come after schizophrenia? It's developmental, no? Enuresis mostly happens, enuresis, encopresis, they mostly happen in childhood. So why is it coming so much later? Even if it's sleep related can happen with children also. So why is it coming later? If it's developmentally, right? It's lifespan approach. It's going from childhood to adulthood, childhood to adulthood to old age. If it's based on that organization, enuresis should come first. No, no. Look at the beauty of this. Look at the craftsmanship of them. Okay, the reason enuresis comes later is because if a child is wetting their bed, we want to make sure that we go through these first. Is it due to maybe autism, ADHD, maybe schizophrenia and anxiety, etc.? Before we move on to this, is enuresis by itself, or is it a secondary thing to these other disorders that occur before? Does that make sense? So it's trying to make sure that you are able to rule out all of these guys. Okay, rule all of them out before you jump to enuresis. Yes, it also helps then to help with the differential. Very good. So what about the ICD on the other hand? We'll give it a blue color because it feels very blue, no? We'll give it blue. Oh, this is too thin. What about the ICD then? If DSM is very this, right? Developmental, what is ICD based on? If the DSM follows a lifespan approach, what approach does ICD follow? Biopsychological. Okay. What do you mean by that? All disorders are biopsychological. How is the ICD organized then? Come on, think about it. Think about the ICD. The ICD is not alphabetical. The first thing is this, no? Dementia and other disorders. Dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff. Dementia, Alzheimer's, neurocognitive disorders. That is not alphabetical. After dementia is this schizophrenia or substance abuse. Dementia, substance abuse, schizophrenia, um, then this neurosis. That's not alphabetical. It goes from organic to non-organic. It wants you to rule out all the organic disorders before you move to the non-organic ones. Before you move on to the non-organic ones. So if someone has, let's say, trouble, let's say someone is feeling, let's say someone has hallucinations, right? Hallucinations would come under non-organic. I'll explain non-organic. Give me a second. But before I move to schizophrenia, right? Let's say someone has visual hallucination. Visual hallucination is more likely in which this is it more likely in schizophrenia or in organic disorders? Yes. So before I rule out visual, right, because it's more likely in organic, right, with vascular dementia. No, not vascular. Uh, yeah, I think it's vascular. Or was it PICS? I'm having trouble remembering that. Yes, schizophrenia is mostly auditory. So before I move on to the non-organic, right, I'd like to rule out that it's not organic. So it moves in that direction. Now, we don't use the word non-organic, to be completely honest. We don't use this. What word do we use instead? Anyone knows? No? We use the word functional syndromes because we are basing it on functional categories. Now, I'll tell you why organic, non-organic means, right? Organic and non-organic, people tend to think that organic is biological and non-organic is not, but that's not true because schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, all of them do have a biological basis. They do. With schizophrenia, you will see what smaller ventricles and excess of dopamine. With depression, you'll see reduced serotonin levels. So, what does non-organic mean here? What do you think? No, non-organic very simply means that we cannot diagnose solely on the basis of biology. So if I am diagnosing someone with schizophrenia, right, I can't do it solely on the basis of biology. I can't look at their brain and say, okay, you know what, serotonin is low, therefore you have depression. I can't do that. So that is a non-organic disorder that we can't diagnose on the basis of biology solely. Doesn't mean that there is no underlying biology, right? That's the very first thing we talked about. They're syndromes where we don't know the etiology properly. Organic, on the other hand, we can diagnose on biological basis, right? Take Alzheimer's, for example. Now, there are neuropsychological tests, but there's simpler things to do. What is accumulated in the brain for people with Alzheimer's? You'll see excess of this one thing. Yes, beta amyloid plaques. There's one more thing, not plagues, plaques. And neuro. Yes, yes. One more thing is there. Yes, fibrillary tangles and tau protein. So you have these biological, markers in a way, or biological uh, areas or things that you can use in order to diagnose Alzheimer's, right? So you can see here the difference between organic and non-organic, or also called as functional syndromes. Is this clear? The difference between functional and non and organic? And that is the approach that ICT takes. That first, let's talk about organic, right? Organic, like neurocognitive disorders, and even if you're talking about substance abuse, things like Korsakoff's syndrome, right, which is caused by thiamine deficiency. So you can identify this clearly. And then you're moving on to the non-organic, like schizophrenia, then anxiety, blah, blah, blah. So uh, to explain again, organic is when I can diagnose on biological basis. On the basis of the biology, we can diagnose. But with functional syndromes, I can't do that. I can't diagnose you with anxiety based on a brain scan. I can't diagnose you with schizophrenia just because your ventricles are small. We can't do that. With schizophrenia, we do see smaller ventricles, but we can't diagnose on that basis. So we can't diagnose solely on the basis of biology. That is the major difference between the two approaches that they take. So DSM takes a lifespan approach, whereas ICD has this spectrum of organic to non-organic. If you want to read properly about this, if you have ICD, just look at the first few pages. Okay, it explains this in depth of what it's talking about. I know we skip directly to the disorders, but in the first few pages, it's explaining this approach that they're taking. Yes, it is usually a good idea to learn about the way the different classification systems are working, because that tells you exactly how they view it, what approach they want you to take. uh, ICD wants you to rule out organic before you move to non-organic. DSM also has something similar, but it's based on a lifespan from what you were born with, what you've had since childhood and onward, because disorders you've had since your childhood, right, or since you were a kid or childhood onset, they typically usually have a worse prognosis. Prognosis is basically just outcome. The outcome is usually slightly worse. So it's taking a developmental approach, whereas the ICD is taking a organic to non-organic approach. It's saying that, listen, let's rule out all the biological things first. If it's not that, we'll consider the functional things, which is also a smart move, right? Because once I remember I reading this case where this person, right, there was this lady, 40-year-old lady. She had recurrent hallucinations, and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But later, they found out that this lady had a huge tumor in her head. And when they took that out, all of this disappeared. the hallucination disappeared. So it's kind of important to consider the biological things before we move on to things like schizophrenia. Makes sense, no? Yeah. So now we look at the approaches, right? There's a few different types of approaches. There is the older version, which is the prototype version, that there is one prototype of what the disorder looks like, and you'll see some variation within it. But we use the prototype as a guideline of how to diagnose. And this is mainly used in the older formats. It's not used all that much anymore. So DSM 3 and before, it's DSM 2 and before is kind of like prototype. DSM 3, DSM 4 is more categorical, that we're going to categorize them. Right? We're going to categorize them into categories, which is why you will see in DSM 3 and DSM 4, what is there? They are axial systems, right? So the axes define those categories. DSM 5 replaces that. So things like Asperger's, which were there earlier, right? They don't exist anymore. Why? Because in neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, it counts as autism spectrum, right? So we don't just say autism anymore. We say autism spectrum. So something like Asperger's, whatever, is a separate category. So Asperger's, oops, it's a separate category, right? But DSM-5 is like, okay, you know what? Let's not keep separate categories. Let's just put it on a continuum, on a spectrum. So DSM-5 is more dimensional. The last one, and this is also the oldest and probably most useful, it's called descriptive or phenomenological, because it doesn't focus on uh, explaining the disorder but describing it. So it'll focus more on not schizophrenia or let's say neurocognitive disorders or with anxiety or ADHD. It will not describe it that way. It will describe it in terms of the experience. So it'll let's say with hallucinations, it will have disorders of hallucination. Yes, PDM does have a similar approach. And within disorders of hallucination, you'll have your typical senses, right? Your sensory hallucinations. It will also have different types like autoscopy, or autoscopy is like where you're getting a feeling that you're seeing yourself from behind in a way. There's also extra campaign hallucinations. Extra campaign hallucinations is where something is, you can feel like you're hearing something, but it's very far away. Or is it seeing something? I'm forgetting whether it was visual or auditory. I have to go back to that. I have to check that. There's also this uh, macroscopia, microscopia, where you have a hallucination where things seem smaller or larger than they really are. Yes, it's not arranged as per symptoms, but and not disorders as well. It's not symptoms really, it's experiences. So I would not call them symptoms. I call them experiences. And descriptive approach is taken by symptoms in the mind. Very, very useful book. Very useful book. If you don't have the time to read it, I will send across these lectures on the group from this one Nimans professor. He very briefly covers each thing. It's a very cool thing. I'll send that across. He's basing it on Sims. And even Fish is based on Sims. Fish is built upon Sims. And yeah, descriptive approach is almost never taught in masters, unfortunately, but it's very, very, very crucial. Very crucial. Because understanding the discrete experiences is very helpful. Okay, so these are the different approaches. There are more, but these are the primary ones. Oh, what college is this? You had only descriptive approach. What college is this? Was it AUD? I have a feeling you are studying at AUD. Those two sentences gave away your entire college. Damn. AUD is a good college. I mean, you have to teach yourself stats. That is the problem. So by definition, does it become more subjective in nature? So I'll tell you something. To the phenomenologists, right? There is no such thing as a distinction between objective and subjective. The distinction between objective and subjective is ridiculous to them. It's just nonsense to them. Like they don't consider objective reality exactly because who's objective? Objective in whose eyes? Objective to whom? Because all of us just have one phenomenal field. So my experience is your experience is there. I can't say my experience is more real than yours. If you want, you can read Lang's book, right? Divided Self. Read the first chapter if you want to understand this properly. The distinction between yes, Lang. See, very nice. Good association. But you're also from AUD. Okay. Yeah, I can see. The way you're dropping Lang and stuff. I have a feeling. I had a feeling. Okay. Axial systems. Now, there are two axial systems. One you would have been familiar with, the other one doesn't even know. There's your DSM-4 one, right? DSM-3, DSM-4 one. The other one, anyone knows? No? There's two axial systems. I'll give you a hint. This is for children. The second one is for children. It's a very commonly asked question in MPhil exams. NET, not so much, but MPhil definitely they ask in different places. Okay, no worries. We'll go over it. See, DSM-4 one you might be aware of, right? I won't spend too much time on it. There's 5 axes, right? No, not JRF. Because JRF is a part of it. It's the 5th axis. These are axial systems. This is the first one is the DSM-4 one. I call it DSM-4 for now, but DSM-3 also had something similar. So axis 1 is clinical disorders, right? So you'll have your major disorders, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, blah, 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 blah. And it may also include conditions that may be focus of clinical attention. Bereavement, my God, bereavement is such a big controversial area. Grief and bereavement, very, very, very controversial because some say it can be a disorder, some say you can't put a cultural limit on what is grief, like that someone there is no right or wrong amount of grieving. So it's what I'm not touching bereavement now. Then the second axis is personality disorders and mental retardation. Actually, now we call it intellectual disability, right? So you'll have pervasive personality disorders and intellectual disability. A good number of personality disorders have been removed, right? Like histrionic and stuff, they have been removed from the newer editions. So they may ask questions about that. There may be a question that something like I remember one of the years in NET there was a question about which of the following have been removed or something like that. So histrionic is something, even narcissistic if I'm not mistaken. So a few of them have been removed from the current existing the cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. No, not narcissistic, but they have a few of them. So have a look at that also. Third is general medical conditions, right? ESDM. I'm not sure what to talk about. Third is medical conditions, right? Physical health issues that might be relevant to the diagnosis. What Google.org. No, we'll get to it. Fourth is psychosocial and environmental problems, right? Like life stressors, for example, or negative environmental circumstances. You can see here it's very comprehensive. It's going from the major disorders, it's going to personality and intellectual disability, right? And then it's also going to it's checking for medical conditions that might be affecting it. You saw with ICD, right? The tumor example that I gave. Why this is relevant? And then axis 4 finally is what? Your psychosocial environmental problems, because environment also could be in a way precipitating, predisposing. It could have protective factors. Firstly, it can be protective, or it may be perpetuating it. It may be making things worse. So very important. Lastly, axis 5 is your global assessment of functioning. So it's a numerical scale of 0 to 100. You'll find an image or something online of what this looks like, which was used by clinicians to rate individuals' overall level of functioning. Okay. This is the DSM-4 system. The second system, okay, that's used for children is given by Rutter. Okay, Rutter's system of Rutter's multi-axial system. It's similar to it, very similar, but it's a little different, right? Axis 1 is clinical disorders of childhood, right? ADHD, whatever, autism, blah, blah, blah. Axis 2 is your specific developmental disorders, which also includes your developmental milestones to check, compared to that, right? Actually, Axis 1 does not contain ADHD. It would have like more disorders and stuff. Yeah, my bad. Third is the intellectual level, right? It's checking for ID, intellectual disorders or disability. Fourth is medical conditions. Fifth is associated abnormal psychosocial situations. And last is global assessment of function. So you can see it's very similar to it, but it's a little different. So Radar system asked for MPhil very often, or whatever is called IMA, right? Whatever, it's asked very often for that. Okay, we're almost at 8. I'll stop over here only. Any questions so far? We won't go into the specific disorders today. It's been a very heavy, very loaded session, psychometry and this. Any questions? Any insights? Any I don't know, something that connected or associated in your head that you feel like, oh, I'd like to share this. Go for it. Something that clicked in your head, or something that you found interesting, something that you found was cool. No? Everyone's just tired, like, it's just a long day, man. Let's just go home. Living experiences categorization. I have a copy of PDM, but the thing is, it's too big a file to even send across. And honestly, don't bother yourself with PDM right now. Focus on net and MPhil. PDM, when you have time and stuff, look at it. No, I'm not sending PDM. We look at it say later in life. Yeah, if you're in UG, don't bother with PDM right now. It's cool. No restriction. It's awesome. Okay. I hope this session was intriguing, and I didn't focus much on disorders right now, specific disorders, because I wanted you to like the area a little before I start bombarding you with information to see it a little differently. And I hope that I succeeded in that, in making the field seem a little bit more than the textbooks offer, right? Because your textbooks will go through the same pattern across whatever whatever it is, will go through the same patterns from that to synopsis. So I hope that it was intriguing and something new. Okay. Awesome. I will see you tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, Sam is taking a lecture and we're starting on psychotherapy. So we're going to do one lecture of abnormal and psychotherapy together.